Hey, this is going to be an interview with a great guy I know named Mike. He runs a channel called Sliding Bench Trainer. It's a quick growing channel. I think when I first saw it, it had just over 1,000 subscribers. Then he went past me way up. He's now over 30,000 and still growing. Mike is known for doing a lot of home gym related stuff. He tries different products, he orders different things, he'll test it out, he'll try it out, and he'll do entire videos and kind of deep dives on it. And he'll revisit the products in the future and kind of experiment with mismatching different things. His whole approach is very unique, very straightforward, and very honest. He's also very well educated, not just from decades of direct experience in the gym and doing things that he's figured out works best, but he actually has a quite a bit of formal education. He's also been in the fitness industry, I believe, probably most of his life. Of all the people I've seen on YouTube, he is one of those very few gems that offers unbelievable insight. He absolutely knows what he's talking about. And even if you don't have a home gym, even if you don't like some of the products he uses specifically, it's definitely worth going and checking out his channel and just listening to what he has to say, because he is a wealth of knowledge. But I'll let him do the talking for himself so you can get a better idea of who this guy is behind the channel. And other than that, I guess this is it. All right. I don't do a lot of interviews on this channel, but there are specific people I do like to interview, or I'd like to interview, because I think they offer something unique and something useful to the YouTube and lifting community in general. And one of those guys is here with me now. His name is Mike. He's a channel called Sliding Bench Trainer. And Mike, I guess the very first question right off the bat is just, can you introduce yourself and kind of tell us about your channel and what you do on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, my name is Mike, and it wasn't always a sliding bench trainer. I kind of evolved into something, which I can probably get into that for sure. Basically, I was kind of always a fitness fanatic, just always really into it, and I basically was trying to find a way to make a living just working out. That was basically my ultimate goal: is how could I do that? And that led to just owning my own various personal training businesses. I worked in various avenues. I can probably get into this in this channel, working in the fitness industry. It later led to a career in higher education, being a professor, obviously going back to graduate school. And so going to graduate school, doing all that. Then the channel just kind of really evolved. I messed around with YouTube and podcasts for a while, and some were some nichey things that, like, there's one I got rid of because I didn't really like it, which maybe I can get it as more of a podcast. But really the channel just kind of evolved naturally when all the lockdown, I'm trying to not use words, and they still ban stuff for the videos. I don't know. But when all that stuff kind of happened, that was just me. Literally, it was a natural evolution of all I had at my gym, or my home gym at that time, and I bought and sold squat racks and all sorts of equipment. But all I had left was some power blocks. My sliding bench trainer, the Weider Ultimate Bodyworks, was a knockoff Total Gym, and that was really it. So I started just using that stuff, which was the first time in a long time that I worked out from home, and I never clicked because I really would get bored working out at home. That was my main thing. And right away, long story short, because I could ramble about this topic for a while, it just led to me using that machine more and more. And I was realizing I was just having more fun. The workouts were actually fairly interesting. And also, I feel like I know Skylar may mention this in the intro. I mean, Skylar was probably the only one that I saw that had some other videos on this machine. And it really realized, like, there was just nothing, there was no resources on this. And so it just led to me literally just messing around with it, and I'd record it and upload it, started thinking more other kind of creative ideas, which was kind of how I approached exercise in general at this point in time, was just kind of more not taking it too seriously, more or less. I'll get into that. And that's pretty much the background. That's the emphasis. And just kind of the channel evolved into just me really just showcasing how I personally like to kind of just have fun. This is really, I'd say, is a glorified kind of toy channel. It's what it is. I probably shouldn't say that, but people have said, like, well, you just kind of talk about these gimmicks and things. It's like, there's plenty of channels out there to get super deep in the weeds. And as a profession, that's what I do, is have to talk about, scientific stuff about exercise science with students. And not that I really force that distinction. This is just what I generally always did. Whenever I was working out and training, if a new thing came out, I just love learning, or it's TRX bands, kettlebells, I would jump on a certification. I would try and learn as much as I could about it, because it just made my exercises more interesting. And that's kind of what this channel is. It's just me messing around with different toys and really showing, this is way longer of an intro I wanted to say. The coffee's pumping in me right now in the morning. Really, it was just me just showing that, and I realized that everything really does work if you put some consistency in there. You mess around, obviously, with different angles and maybe a little bit of programming too. And obviously there's some need to just experiment yourself. But really, just everything does work, and you don't have to go to a mega gym to get results. And that's also kind of an emphasis of the channel.
You'd see a big difference in the way people approach the idea of being physically active based on their upbringing. For example, I grew up, my dad didn't play any sports. We didn't watch any sports. I was on a farm or anything. So I didn't have a particularly active lifestyle, or even influences like through watching sports. And that's very different than somebody who maybe grew up on a farm and they were being physical their entire life. And it's just kind of part of their existence from day one. I think it changes their approach to it mentally, but then can potentially change the biological side of things, like how your body processes the hormones and puberty and things like that. So, what would you say? How would you kind of categorize your upbringing or your background before you officially got into fitness?
Very sedentary, and I'm extremely sedentary. To the point where, I mean, I always loved making up my own games, which I think all this stuff does kind of come full circle. I'm not really doing anything different than I did when I was a little kid. If it was bodybuilding, everything else was boring, I wouldn't be doing it. If using these machines was boring, I wouldn't be doing it. Um, I had a big imagination. I shouldn't say hated sports, probably did hate sports. My parents put me in everything, put you sign up for stuff. And I was like, I just don't really care about doing it. I didn't have that kind of mentality. People are like really into it, especially in yeah, I was gonna say, like in the early '90s, it was like Michael Jordan, like the Bulls were huge, and I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so that was like especially at that time. I think basketball players. I did love sports in the sense of they were like iconic superheroes. So you had like Bo Jackson and these like Michael Jordan, even like Frank Thomas. You had these bigger guys that were just like larger than life people. That part I loved. I could care less about watching it, but I loved the iconic element of just sports. Long story, I never really paid attention. Friends would love, quoting sports figures, and point is, I never was into it. And I would say I was athletic. I would love going outside, and I would love video games. I mean, I still would probably be addicted to video games if it wasn't for family and stuff. But that's something I kind of trying actually not to do, honestly. But I always loved video games, loved imagination, loved film and video. That was actually something I did really want to go into. My passion was in film and video, which is something you wouldn't maybe see that much on the channel because it's not about the best production quality. But that will lead into something later. I'm all over the place right now. With film and video, I will say I learned a quick lesson. As much as I was passionate about, like, I loved heavy metal music. I loved music. I thought I'd be in a heavy metal band. That was the other thing. You have these aspirations of things you want to do. And then you realize when you actually start practicing, say, guitar, or you start getting out in film sets, which is what I was doing, and you realize you're up there for 24 hours, like not sleeping and all sorts of stuff, or editing a lot just in the dark room for a long period of time. I realized like I don't like it as much as these people do. Health and fitness was much more what I was obsessive with, where I would just be up all night reading about that, buying textbooks at a certain point. So that's when I realized early on, like your passion is something you authentically have to figure out. Like, do you kind of like this, or do you really like this? But to really make a kind of nutshell on that, on just the physical activity side, it wasn't until I just discovered basic bodybuilding. I would say I'm more of an introvert. I was definitely a very social kid, a lot of friends, but I got that bodybuilding bug. And it was really that kind of taught me just being consistent. I would say I was not disciplined. I hated physical activity, but that really got me into, and you could say maybe I don't think there was exercise addiction, but I think I was just really into it, going to the gym consistently. That just became a point, and I could go more in details in this. I got that bug, and that led to everything at this point. I just got obsessed with health and fitness, and tried to learn as much as I could, and that was really kind of the crux of it. And to your point too about physical activity, I do find, especially when you meet students where I'm at too, like you find people that are really into sports. I think there's a statistic on this too. I'm sure it's statistic for everything, that those guys that are really physically active with sports and exercise, I find them kind of petering off once they get into like adulthood, because they might use those skills they learned to kind of put into like their career. Versus I find a lot of people that get into being health fitness fanatics, or generally those people, maybe the kind of you described yourself, weren't into sports, and that's kind of they're the ones who kind of stay kind of consistent and pick up the health and fitness, just active lifestyle. I'm sure that's not the case, but I've noticed that trend too.
You've said a few times that you made a direct and intentional choice to choose to pursue fitness, not just for personal reasons, like you were into film, for example, but in the end you chose fitness, and you were into martial arts, but then again you kind of pushed it back towards fitness. Maybe you had some personal struggles. Potentially, you could have been off the deep end somewhere, but fitness helped keep you directed. Outside of just personal enthusiasm for it, um, what is your education related to fitness?
When I was in college, I was really into film and video. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, is like, you should really get into like health and fitness stuff. And I'm like, I'm trying to talk fast to get to the point. uh, I was like, oh, I kind of know it all, whatever. I don't need what else. What is there to really learn? And I ended up taking an internship during one of the, I think it was a summer, and I was at this really high end personal training gym. I was really hired probably because of the way I was looking, and I was a younger guy, and they were kind of hiring people based on kind of looks, which is still the case, probably. But that couldn't work. I had no certification, I had nothing, so they let me kind of intern for free, which is I didn't no problem doing that. I was at that point, I was kind of getting really into it. The guy who kind of I call him, he was like my Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was like his name was Justin. Also hardcore. If you know the personal training lifestyle, he was a lifer. He was in his late 40s, all sorts of background stuff. I mean, funny guy, probably a little conniving guy for sure, but really got me into thinking outside the box of health and fitness. And I think at that time, that was a huge, I don't think people really realized that shift of like those early 2000s, I believe, what was going on with the internet and sharing information. That was when CrossFit was coming out, and you had people that were in the 90s, it was all secret. It was like not secret, it was like all certifications and seminars. Now information starting to get dispersed, and he started exposing me to people, or he'd sit me on the computer for my internship training. Aside from I was learning from him, which was like eye-opening. The biggest thing was like corrective exercise. That was big then, and I have a love-hate with that. But corrective exercise is like, oh, this exercise can work these, like the idea of muscle balances, like the overactive, underactive muscles, understanding the complexity of exercises blew me away. And I'd be in a room with these people who were very educated trainers. We do like little labs, and they would watch someone do something. Okay, what's the problem here? And they all just start rattling off like small muscles, all sorts of things. I'm like, whoa, okay, I thought I knew muscles. These guys actually know what's going on with how they work. And that's a tangent I get in education, why it's so important. I actually want to make a video on this. But long story short, he sat me in front of something called PT in the Net, which is still on today, but it was really the educational resource for trainers. You can listen to coaches and people talk. It was like a membership fee thing. And I'd listen to people like Paul Chek, who was hugely influential. He's still around to this day. He's really into like Eastern mysticism, but he still is a really well-respected strength conditioning coach. He essentially coined the idea of that everyone's copied at this point on taking movement patterns and dissecting them. So like push-pull patterns, working the whole body through those prime movement patterns, and then regressing and degressing them. It's hard to not get in the weeds in this, but that got me obsessed with like, wow, I got really into it. And I got back to being a kid. If I was researching comic books, or like I was really into like conspiracy theories when I was younger before no one else did, like looking up UFOs and Bigfoot, stuff like that. I love getting deep into weeds and stuff that I was interested in that wasn't academic. Then I realized, okay, I really did have a true passion. I was buying used textbooks. Long story short, I worked for that company for a while. It was a high-end personal training gym where they were paying upwards of $100+ an hour. And I realized, what the hell, I'm getting a cut of that. So I'm like, well, I should start my own thing and do this. I can get paid this money. So that's kind of what happened. I started my own business. That led into me which at that time I was already getting a bunch of certifications. I was kind of a certification junkie. I would get as many certifications as I could because I just liked the information. And that led to me getting a master's I was going to like a night school master's program only because I wanted to support my business. So I thought that would kind of give me some credentials, a bit being whatever. And then that led into, once I was getting my master's, there was mentors there that realized, I think I could really like education, because I really, at that point, as much as I was doing personal training, and this kind of segued, I thought like I had professionals I was looking up to. I'm like, this lifestyle I could love, because it's just basically doing everything I'm talking about. It's learning. You're basically getting paid to learn and just share the information. So I knew that right away. That was really attractive. So the whole time I'm working, and then I eventually get a PhD because I realized I want to go into academia, which first was focused in on ergonomics, because I was really into corrective exercise. Ergonomics is heavy biomechanics, more heavy than I really was interested in at that time. So I was a year into ergonomics, and I transferred out of that to like a general PhD in health professions education that was more just specific and more kind of broad reaching. And at that time, I was still working. At this time, it was metro gyms in like the northeastern area. So I basically walked in a gym and I said, here's my credentials. And I had a bunch, I kind of would joke about it, but it was just, I liked it. So I'd walk in, I said, I got a credentials. It's like, here's a folio. And the guy looked at all these certification things. Okay, well, yeah, let's just hire you, whatever. And I kind of said, like, I'd really love to just be your director of personal training education. I kind of threw it out there. Right place, right time. The guy was definitely a salesman. That crew that I worked with was out of control. I'll just say the least. But they basically paid me as it is still probably in this point in time in gyms. They literally pull people off the floor and they need you to train them because they just want people on the floor and they want salesmen more than actual good trainers. So my job was really to take these people and get them kind of trained, quote unquote, in a very short period of time. Not just that, I'd work in the gyms individually. And this is again this is a big radius I was traveling. I'd also just talk to the veteran trainers and see what they were doing. I'd kind of give them tips or just give them seminars. That's what I would do while getting my PhD. So I eventually was doing that, then eventually doing independent contractor work. But the education, and this was probably way longer than you wanted information, was just really, I was always obsessed with it. Still to this day, I love reading and going to certifications, going to seminars. That's what I like. I'm just a natural learner. That's what I like to do. So, and I say it to all my students, like, I don't consider myself a guru on that or anything. I just say, I'm just like you. I'm just a learner and I'm just sharing the information. A lot of times my thoughts change, and I came to that realization early on getting into camps and dogmas that like, I'm probably going to change my mind on this. And I got to kind of do the Bruce Lee analogy, which I've said before is Bruce Lee, we talked about, like when you first started trying martial arts, a punch was a punch, a kick was a kick, is very basic. Then you get super, theoretical and everything. Well, there's all these nuances, there's certain ways of punching, the best way of punching and kicking. And then you go full circle. It's like, no, it is just a punch and a kick, but now you're going to kind of make it your own and decipher what works for you.
If you had to summarize that for somebody, if somebody was trying to figure out in one real short blurb, what was the biggest difference between the trainer they see at the gym versus a trainer like you, what would you say the biggest distinction is?
I think it would just be as the person actually passionate what they're talking about versus they're just kind of into it and they're using it as a means to an end, which that happens in any profession. I think some people, people want to be physical therapists, so they want to be a doctor. It's like, well, if you really are passionate about it, you're probably outside of the textbook class stuff. You should be looking into other resources and being kind of into it. I think that would be the biggest thing. And just because that guy I told you, Justin, gave me a good tip one time, there was other upper level trainers. And I think I asked him some of the question what this guy was doing. I'm like, well, that seems kind of like I asked this guy, like, this guy was a veteran trainer, also 50 plus years old. And I said, I thought he was doing something the correct way. And I asked him a question, what he was doing. And he's like, just because these guys are doing a long time doesn't mean they're doing it the right way. So you can do things the wrong way many years and just be stuck in your ways. I think it's keeping an open mind and again, always being a learner, basically.
I think that's a trap that's easy for anybody to fall into. I think it's kind of part of human nature is to start getting stuck in our ways, especially the longer we do the same thing. But I think when it comes to training philosophies in particular, you see that a lot. Even with YouTube fitness in particular, you see some channels that were once the top most popular channels on YouTube that were kind of all about certain concepts or certain approaches to fitness, but the channel did not evolve with the knowledge or with the experience of the overall community. And they kind of end up falling out of favor and they're not sure why. I can't help but not to call somebody out, but I can't help but to think of the Mark Ripito effect.
Oh, yeah. I saw, Mark Ripito, and I saw great, awesome content, obviously awesome guy. But when I saw him at Wichita Falls, it was part really educational seminar and part comedy hour. It was,
I've got several of his books. I really like Mark Ripito. He's a very educated guy. He really knows what he's doing. But there are some areas, where it's comical. And I think even he knows he's just old and stuck in his ways and he's not interested in changing his mind.
Yeah, and I mean that so this comes across clear. I don't mean that any disrespect of comedy wise. It was like, he just says his mind, and it's just he almost like he does it intentionally, to kind of make.
Oh, he knows what he's doing. He's self-aware.
Yeah. And to that point about education, I want to also make a whole video. I've been meaning to do this for a time. Is just that I tell this to trainers, and because this is a common pushback I get all the time. Whether you go hire, this is advice to the general person too. If you're going to hire a personal trainer, or if you want to be an aspiring personal trainer, you are a personal trainer, is just education. Because I think 9 times, and it happens to everybody, even students that I talked with now. I'm trying to go too much of a rant, but they all will say something to the effect of like, well, I don't need that certification. I already kind of know what I'm doing. Because you go to the gym and you'll say, one, either they're not certified yet. They'll say, okay, I know I'll get the certification. 2 or 3 weeks goes by and they never get it. And then it's like at that point, they're already working. Everyone forgets about it. Or they've been working there for a few years and they make it up and never got it, which that happens, believe it or not. So one of the first things I would do as I start going to like certifications, I call the company and they're like, no, such and such doesn't have it, or it's lapsed. So they'd say they are certified and they would never just do it. But the common pushback I would get is, well, I already kind of know what I'm doing, so I don't need to do that. And I'm like, hey, there's a number of problems with that. But the biggest problem with it, one, it's just disingenuous to the client. Like, you should be certified. But two, with any scientific subject, unless you're one of those rare people that literally you can get something, it sticks and it's there forever. Most people, once you learn something, you forget it. I'd forget half the stuff if I didn't have to keep talking about it, which is one of the benefits of being a teacher, is that you have to keep in yourself intuitively. It teaches you yourself continuously. But with a trainer, it's like, if you say something as simple as like, well, why are you doing this? Or what is this exercise working? Just break it down. They might tell you, like, it works the chest or the back, whatever, but it's very clear within a few minutes that you can understand, like, hey, they don't know what they're talking about, in the sense that they can't convey to me why they picked this exercise. So it's very easy to go on the internet now and we can make a YouTube channel and just start reading an article, and I'll just copy that in a video and just say it. And I sound super smart, and it comes off that way. But if I were to have a discussion with you and say, if I'm doing an exercise session or a practical with you, I'm like, what does this work? Or what's happening here? It's deer in the headlights. And that happens a lot with students who are the kind of the stereotypical meathead who's working on his whole life. He's like, I got this, whatever. And then they take the test and they wonder why they got an F. Or you do a practical with them and you ask them point blank a question and they can't answer it. These are stuff we already kind of reviewed. They do not like that. Versus someone who's totally brand new, just a studious student, they know nothing about exercise. They can adequately explain a good rationale why they picked a certain exercise. So I can go on a rant about that. But the point is, you got to blend the two, education and practical experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because you started really getting popular with your Total Gym videos, and then you started transitioning and you started saying, well, yes, the Total Gym is a great piece of equipment, but my roots are before the Total Gym, real gyms, real equipment, free weights. But I also think machines are good, and resistance bands, and with things that you've jokingly called like gimmicks. Some people say are gimmicks, right? You'll try it all and you'll do it all and you'll see the benefit in a lot of things. But with so many videos being made and so many topics being covered and so many different routines and sets and reps and approaches to volume or intensity or recovery or diet that you've talked about in so many videos, what is it that you do? And I'm not asking for your exact routine, because I don't want somebody trying to copy paste it, right? But when it comes generally to what you found works well for you and your lifestyle, whether it's keeping you interested or it's finding a good balance with just your daily routine, your work, family balance, all these things, what is your general approach to a healthy lifestyle?
As far as what I do, I mean, I think it's not too much has really changed, because I think I just find something that really works for me and I apply it. So I think I went through all sorts of stints. Bodybuilding was always a core. Like, I always realized I kind of kept the foundations of traditional kind of like multiple sets, kind of pumping type workouts kind of seemed to work best for me as far as like muscle definition was concerned. I would get into strength stuff for sure. And I think that's when you have to be really specific. Like, you can't just start going and, eyeballing your strength stuff. You get setting, numbers and stuff. Having a logbook is very important. Like, that's what you got to do for sure. But I found that kind of tedious and boring. So this gets into individual preferences. Like, I don't personally like that. Now, some people love that and they need to document everything. They have logbooks and that's what they really love. I don't really like that. I started doing that again recently. I got a few days in. I'm like, okay, I don't like this. It's good to have benchmarks, but I love just, again, it's all about, to me, having fun. And some people hate that. And to me, it's like, that's fine. But I just compare, I'm all about being practical, most first and foremost, and then also what I actually enjoy. So the most practical thing in the world is doing something you actually like doing. So why do fitness and everything if it's just not fun? So that's one thing. You could say, yeah, injury and stuff like that. But what I would do is I'd get into like calisthenics, or if it was TRXs or kettlebells, when I was training, I was kind of doing the same thing. I would have a bag full of stuff, like a hockey bag full of stuff, and I'd bring it in there. A lot of this was from kind of Paul Chek-ish functional training, which I was always using as a grain of salt. But I would just do things I wanted to learn. Like, how do I do that dip on a ring? Or how do I do that muscle up? I wanted to learn how to do that. So I learned those skills alongside keeping my foundations of doing arms, chest, back, bodybuilding stuff. Even when I was doing aerobic stints, I had a stint where I was doing hardcore long distance running for a couple summers. I'll get into that. I would still do some bodybuilding and stuff, a little bit peppered in there. So I'd say in general, as much as I still definitely experiment and try different things recently in the last few years, mostly because of the channel and using these total gyms, I think to me what works best on this thing which is also something else we're saying. You can see the body transition change. People say, like, "Oh, your body really changed the total gym." Like, it didn't. It's really how it always was. If you didn't see me before the channel, if I do bodybuilding type workouts, that's what my body kind of looks like. If I do strength workouts, sometimes people want to hear this. It might just be me. I look kind of flatter. Like when I came off early 2020, when I was really hitting the weights hard, I was really going through another strength set just coming off it. And if you look at those videos, I look smaller, but you look like you put on a lot of muscle mass. I'm like, no, it's just my body size looks like that when I was doing strength training. I was much heavier, but the definition just wasn't there. So just doing traditional volume type stuff on a total gym, you can see I think, at least for me, the body kind of progressed a little bit to where it normally was before when I did bodybuilding. So for me, it was a split that worked out good, was doing more upper lower. I would mess with heavy days with lower intensities when I was going back in here in the weight room. But I was doing the total gym from like 2020 to end of, I don't know, honestly, right around 2023 is when I really started incorporating more stuff. Because predominantly, as I always said, people think I was making it up. Like was what I was doing. That's just what I enjoyed and what kind of clicked for me, intuitive what I had. But I would say more as a basic answer, I prefer to do the 2 times a week body parts, a little bit more volume, but I definitely there's value in switching it up. So the high intensity stuff, I know that's gigantic, very popular. I started trying doing some of that because people could ask me about that in the channel. I might do some more high intensity stuff, people talking about it. I think it's very interesting. I think it's really cool, but I just think objectively, what I see people do the volume stuff, I think all those things work, but I have a hard time, at least for me personally, when I see other people, I just feel like people get better results when they do just a tiny bit more than just doing that one set. And I would like to hear your response on that too, but that's in general, I'd say more high volume, a little more twice a week training, but I don't always stick with that all the time.
Yeah, my 2 cents on that is I think I agree with you completely. But you said that even though you don't have real strict go to certain piece of equipment or certain type of workout, because you kind of change it up for the sake of fun, uh, is there are there any general rules that you would say as far as a healthy lifestyle, and not even just fitness in general, but again, just overall healthy lifestyle? Are there certain things that you absolutely avoid, and are there also certain things that you think are an absolute necessity?
A side point, I think as far as physical activity is concerned, I think, yeah, you can definitely overdo it. Where I definitely agree with like the high intensity folks, 100%, is management of stressors. Any training, I think really the secret sauce is managing stressors. That's ultimately what it's all about, is you only have so much finite resources. Your body will not just get awesome into perpetuity. It's how do you sequentially organize, let's say for periodization, for strength conditioning, if you're an athlete, how do we peak for this competition? And the only way we can manage to like peak for competition is managing and manipulating these stressors, understanding how the body responds and adapts to stress. So I definitely know that there are times when I can overdo it and do too much, and that's definitely not good. And that's not just physically, that's also mentally, all sorts of things. Burning the cylinders is just not, I think that's just not good for health. And that goes with the mental side, which I think is the biggest elephant in the room. The biggest thing I would talk about ad nauseum, which I think is a huge epidemic, is with fitness or diet, is the obsession of the perfect diet, the perfect lifestyle. Biohacking, I think, is horrible, I think, for most people, because all that stress you're putting in yourself that you really don't know much about is probably doing you more harm than good. So I think balancing stressors would be the biggest thing. So don't overdo it in the gym. Give yourself adequate recovery, listening to your body. I know that's something that comes with experience, but like right now, I did a really hard workout a couple days ago. I'm still definitely feeling like, yeah, you shouldn't be working out today. Like that's something I try to pay attention to. And I would say if you're doing an exercise, big thing I tell a lot of the clients too is, whether it's a total gym or anything else, if you're doing an exercise and it just feels weird, or you get something else that's better, chest exercise, just find those 1 or 2 exercises that feels good for you and stick with it. There's never an exercise I'm going to do for the sake of doing it. If it doesn't feel right, there's a lot of common exercise, overhead. I think you were talking about this, like you like this one. Was it you said that? I even think
Yeah,
of
I
someone
really
else.
do. I like the overhead extensions.
Yeah. So like for me, it doesn't feel good. I don't like that one. So I just won't do it. So it doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything, but there's some exercises I just don't like, or over, the upright rows. Something just feels weird about it for me. And that's not the best. You shouldn't always use that because stuff is always going to feel weird the first time you do it. But I'll just stop there. That would be the main things.
The next question is kind of a two-part question, and it comes to the dreaded, but also I think very important, especially because of what we're getting to, the subject of AAS. And you are natural athlete, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what is your history with AAS? Like, did you ever dabble in anything before? And if not, then how were you able to avoid the temptation, especially as it's become over the years, different ages? We have ego, obviously, but then as you're getting into different things, certifications, going to these camps, other lifters, comparing your numbers, and then with social media, it seems like more people than ever are feeling like it's something that they kind of have to do and is just a commonplace thing. And I think people getting the perception that if you don't do it, then you're artificially limiting yourself. So if you've never done it, then how are you able to avoid that temptation?
I think if you told me that you could do it and jump it off and go right back to normal, like if there was no real big like long-term risk or long-term dedication to using it, there's no question I probably would have tried that a long time ago. That probably would, I mean, I think knowing right. Well, I'll go back to the beginning. I think the only thing when you're younger and you first start working out, like I was never really one to care too much. Some people, and it's just overall general preferences. Like I was just more mirror focused. I never cared about like specific things. Like I want to build my chest up this area or body circumferences. I was more like visual. I just want to look a little bigger or something like that. That was the only real thing how I approached it. Um, which is a big secret early on. When I was accused of using it earlier, I thought creatine was like a super secret thing. Like no one would touch creatine. When I was younger, it was like some people did it, but even that people were nervous about it. So when I first got into creatine, like that alone was like, actually the very first thing was NO2. That supplement, which was just L-arginine alpha ketoglutarate, was like a patented basic NO product. The first one was like $80 a bottle. That actually probably got me into fitness because I love sport nutrition because of that. The placebo effect I think is real. I think there's something to of buying a product. I love the marketing of it. I don't care what people say. I love it. I don't care. I mean, I love sport nutrition because of that. So when I talk to marketers, I'm like, I love it. I'll eat it up. And I think that's great. So I had the book and I was following it. It got me doing stuff and I could see my body changing. I was pumping up. I'm like, this is great. And I could see it. But then when I got creatine and it was like Cell Tech. And you remember Cell Tech?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I would double dose that. I would do the 10 grams before and after. So I was 20 grams of creatine all the time. And I just was a bloated monster. But I thought that was awesome. And people were like, what are you on? And then when I started adding food on top of it, like really eating, that's when I was accused, like, you're on something for sure. And I'm like, I was just a walking creatine monster is what it was, just bloated. but I felt big. So that temptation of getting big was there. It was really the pro hormones. I think we talked about this. Like I dabbled in that maybe 3 times of the ones that those were coming out. Those were, I don't know if they were legal, not legal when they first coming out. That was the only thing I really got into because they were just, pills. If you could take something that didn't have any side effects, that was just an oral, something like that, then I probably would have tried it. But knowing the risks, and plus, like I said, I was already, I think, the drinking probably was something too. Like I already knew I was taxing my body a little bit, that was just gonna be over the limit. But I had a really close friend who was into that stuff, and I would go to his house and I saw the stuff that's out there. I won't say because the video might get flagged a little bit, but this is back in the day. So he was doing that, and he was a really close friend, and he was kind of enticing me to do it. And I was like, he was also then doing other stuff that came along in the mail. I'm like, oh, this is just not an attractive thing. Flash forward, I was in a gym in the Midwest, a really big popular gym, and there's bodybuilders there all the time. And same thing, they're like, if you took this, you'd have great genetics, and you could be on stage and be competing, and you'd look awesome. And they gave me the gel, the creams. And they feel like, try this out first. Like, I don't know if I never tried it because even then I'm like, I don't know, that's not going to do anything. This couple of gel thing, but that was like a kind of an enticer, like a tease. Like then you can see what the real stuff's like. But probably because I never had an interest in bodybuilding, like I never wanted to get on stage and do that stuff. So that was probably the biggest thing, just to do it for the sake of doing it. So I kind of knew that there was already risks involved, and just the logistics, like we talked about in our last interview, I just think weren't worth it. Now, flash forward, you get into like TRT stuff. And like I said, every conference I go to, it seems like they're promoting that and everyone's doing that and saying it's like, there's no risk. It's just all about health benefits. You're coasting for life and it's just awesome. It's going to make your whole life better. Even that, I just feel like I just don't want the headache to deal with that stuff. I mean, I don't want to worry about that. And knowing the history of dieting, exercise, obsessing about numbers, obsessing about the perfect way of doing things, I just feel like it was going to make my life worse. So.
Well, then that launching point of the being a natural and everything else, and you mentioned the TRT, that actually came to the biggest aspect that I think I wish I could make 100 videos on this, and nobody ever watch all of them. But the one of the biggest things that I learned that was beneficial to me, and really was an eye opening experience, and I've started to see a little bit of a revolution in the YouTube community, and now as natural lifting is getting more popular, is people discovering that the way a natural lifter trains is very, very different than the way a a user would train, in the sense that when you're natural, you can get amazing results. You can get very, very strong. You can get very, very big. You can get a really phenomenal physique and be a very impressive athlete, totally natural. But it's crucial that you do things correctly, and there's not as much room for error. You really have to, more or less, especially the higher you go as far as your results go, you really have to dial in your intensity or your diet or your consistency or the type of training you're trying to focus on. Whereas, as we've both talked about before, we have very clear studies showing that if you're using some type of AAS, you're basically going to respond to anything. I mean, the studies have shown that somebody who does not train at all but takes testosterone will gain more muscle than somebody who's natural but trains regularly. So, what do you think is or are some of the biggest aspects or misconceptions about training and or diet, just that general lifestyle that people have today that they don't realize are not only not beneficial but potentially detrimental to a natural lifter?
Really good question. My brain's kind of thinking what the best response to that would be. And there's a lot of things. One would just be, like I said, the obsession component. I think when I talk to people and they overthink things, I just overthinking things. And I think especially realizing also that I don't like to say this too much, but it's just a reality. It doesn't mean you shouldn't keep going. But if you took years off and you're starting up when you're 30, 40, 50, you're just not going to look, I don't care. Even if you take, TRT, I mean, your body is not going to, you've already laid the foundation. You lost some muscle. Sarcopenia is a real thing. You kind of have to start. I tell the students, like, you want to keep just training, make your body, make stuff a little bit easier. It just start as early as possible and just stay consistent. I think consistency is the biggest thing. So that's first and foremost. Just don't fluctuate between various programs. Like, oh, this didn't work, so I'm just take a couple weeks off. I mean, do at least a little bit of something. I think is good consistently. I was going to go more of a kind of a tangent on that, but consistently would be a huge thing. I guess overthinking things. I think the idea of just doing, it's kind of everyone's there's an individual perspective of this, because some people either do too less, they do too much, and I think the too much thing is, I find, a little rare. I know people are going to like really hate that response, because some people will say, "Well, you overtrain." That's a real big thing. I think we were talking about this, like the Lee Priest example. Like, and I think there's a lot of people like that. And genetics are for sure a gigantic thing, for sure, of course. But I think if you start working out at an early age and just being consistent, the way your body responds to just exercise is just going to be, it's just kind of primed that way, just to respond to just putting on muscle, versus if you start later in life and you have a very sedentary lifestyle, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I find that with myself, like if I want to gain or mostly drop weight, like I feel like I can drop weight fairly easily if I really want to. And I don't think it's because I have superior, like really good genetics. And I saw it myself, because you're like, oh, you just have good genetics or something. And the training does make a difference, because I can tell you right now, I've trained a certain way where I didn't see anything visually, and I trained another way and it was much different. So I think just having that intuitive approach, I think for sure getting a coach, understanding the fundamentals, but don't get so bogged down and dependent on other people. I think you got to go in the gym and experiment. And just for me, this is popping in my brain and people probably hate it, but the idea, it's not clear. So I understand that too, which is why I try not to say things too specific in the channel, because this can't apply to everybody. But just again, find those exercises that work, which ones kind of feel good a certain way. I think if you're just doing something, your body knows. Like, you think if you're doing an exercise, most people know, like, I can feel this in my quads, I can feel this in my butt, I can feel this actually working, then it's probably a good exercise. If you're doing something like, it hurts my shoulder. I'm amazed how many people do stuff in pain and just do stuff for the sake of doing it, and they know it's not really producing any results, but they keep repeating it. I'm going to regret this answer, because there's probably way better stuff I could have said, but those would be kind of big things. Either it's not pushing yourself enough and just not being consistent with the giant things, I think.
When I was getting into fitness and gym culture, most people learned from things like Flex Magazine. And that was always, you did as many exercises as possible. You trained each muscle once a week. You had a chest day and a back day and whatever else. And then when you did chest day, you basically did every single exercise you could think of that would work your chest from every angle in the same day. And on that exercise, you do 3 working sets of 8 to 12. And it was always that either 3 or 5 sets of 8 to 12 on just generically for everything. And I, as you pointed out, did that for years, just spinning my wheels and was getting very little to no results. And I was convinced that it had to be everything else. It must be the fact that I have terrible genetics. It must be the fact that I don't have a super high end fancy diet because I can't afford the best foods, or it must be because I'm not taking enough supplements. I need to get my pre workouts and my intro workouts and my post workouts, and I also need to make sure I have my 3 different types of protein. I need egg protein and whey protein, obviously, but I also probably need to get some soy protein. I need to be drinking my milk, obviously, but it has to be soy milk, and I need my low fat peanut butter and wheat toast and boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and everything's always a calorie deficit because you don't want to get fat. Like so much, like everything basically was being pushed by these magazines and by this industry of that, just the generic, smiling pro athlete saying, just take your vitamins and say your prayers, And I was convinced that I was the problem. I just have terrible genetics. Obviously, I'm not pushing myself hard enough. And then later you come to find out that basically everything I was doing was wrong. Yeah.
Because I want to go back to that volume point, because that could be confusing, because I definitely was doing too much. Like you were saying, like, yeah, the stereotypical, like I do chest and I got to do like 5 different machines for my chest just alone. And you do feel like, even retrospectively, I'm like, yeah, I'll be in the gym 2 hours and you feel flat after the first like 45 minutes, but
Yeah.
you're still just doing it because I feel like more is more. So that I definitely disagree with. So if I'm saying in volume, I disagree with that. Like that's not what I'm not disagreeing with you, but that's the stereotypical stuff. That's not what I mean by volume. I'm talking about, which is true, I think, and even that high intensity crowd, I think there's a lot of middle ground. I want to make a video talking about the stuff that I think is for sure really good in that kind of crowd, but there's pros and cons to everything. But what I did find later on was that doing the bro splits like you did, Monday was chest day. For years, this was Monday was chest, Tuesday was back, Thursday was shoulders and a little bit of arms. Wednesday was that. Thursday was core, maybe some cardio. Friday was, I did a little bit of everything. And then Saturday or Sunday was like the mental part of my brain, like, do I do something? Do I not do something? Because I want to how to do this.
Yeah. The hardest part is to stay out of the gym.
Yeah. And that was the weekend too. So that's how I got out of that. But then I repeat the cycle again. Monday was chest day. But then it was until the other stuff I started experimenting with that I'm like, okay, I'm going to break these rules and I'll just go in, I'll do some chest. But I realized then that was natural evolution, that now I think it is commonly accepted that train the body part twice a week. Even those days, like I probably could have done chest again 3 more days. I felt like it was good. But my volume is you can do a few more sessions per week. And even when I am doing, say, I'm working upper body day and I do my chest, it probably is only definitely 1, maybe 2 exercises. And I'm doing a few sets. It's not mega sets, but it's not just one all-out set. It's enough where I feel like, okay, that was good. And you get to that point where like that was the work for the day. And you basically people argue the point. I always don't like this, like even the Dr. J interview with the idea of the suntan analogy. Immediately when first time I heard it, and this was again a long time ago, is that it never really totally made sense with me. And I'm sure someone's going to jump in, well, this is like what it means. But the idea was, and this is the X3 thing says this too, like, well, you just need one exposure to the stimulus. Like you need one exposure to the sun. You don't need multiple exposures to signal in the body to adapt. And I think a lot of things get into like semantics, I believe, because in that same analogy, I think like, well, it depends how you want to like paint that picture, because is it really much of a difference if I guess the idea of like just going back to the suntan analogy, is it really, I can go up there and say, well, I'm doing one all out, I'm in the sun for X amount of exposure. Well, the exposure is what's initiating the adaptation, the response. So in their mind, it's like, well, the exposure is the one set, it's all you need. So that's like saying, well, I can go outside for 20 minutes. That's the exposure I can go inside. I think we're really talking about the totality of stress and stimulus to the body. So I can go outside for 20 minutes. I can go inside and come back out again for 10 minutes. The point is it was that total duration. So when I do, I guess, when I'm thinking about in my own workouts, when I'm stressing the chest, yeah, there are definitely times I could do one all-out set and do some drop sets or whatever. I'm like, that was enough. I feel good. But if I do a second or third set, maybe that first one just wasn't as good, or I want to dial back some little variable, I'm still getting to that point of, I would say, pretty much failure-ish, where I'm like, if I do any more, it's not, I can feel that regression in what I did for the day. So whether that's one set or two or three sets and you're manipulating some little variable, I don't think it's a big difference in my opinion. But I know some people hate that. But to their point, I think, yeah, if you blast your body part multiple sets, I don't think that can be digging a hole. I think that's not productive. And I'll give them that. The recovery thing I think is gigantic. I think, yeah, there's days where I'm guilty of this. If I took an extra day in recovery, I know I'd come back kind of a little bit stronger. But then sometimes the size just feels a little different. That's my little side point there though.
You've mentioned a little bit how you got started with YouTube, and you did mention that now it's almost like a toy, kind of, right? Like you have fun with it and you enjoy it, and you have a kind of a lighthearted approach to it. This big thing I want to ask is, what's the future for you? Not just with your YouTube channel. Like, do you have specific goals or things that you would potentially like to do with your YouTube channel now that you've kind of been a little more serious about it? But then outside of YouTube, also, what are your goals personally for your life, whether it's your personal fitness journey or your career? Are there certain milestones or certain points that you are specifically trying to hit, or that you are just hoping to kind of land at some point?
I think, and this, I know this is like my totally own personal feelings on this. So I know this is not going to apply to everybody. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying. I think a problem, this is for me personally. For some people, it's great, like the performance psychology and the biohacking and making yourself the ultimate human, or especially with a guy, the ultimate male, and hitting these lofty goals. I think some of that stuff is one, kind of dangerous in the way of thinking, but also I think kind of short-sighted, a little more egotistical and focused more on just self-promotion. And I think for me, I think any human, this, I'll just say myself, I think that I want to try and work on humility and just try and getting rid of ego. I think we all have egos. I still have an ego for sure. So my own aspirations are, one, just recognizing, and this, I'm going to try not to get so sappy religious, whatever, but I want to try and lower myself. It's the opposite. So I think what our culture tells us is build yourself up, be the biggest man in the room, walk in and have everyone look at you and you're so great. That's the best way, people always talk about humility, but it's like this false sense of humility, I think. And even when you look at like fitness culture, it's always, we're glorifying the person who's hurting themselves, really. I mean, there's a couple examples recently I'm thinking of. This person's going on a downward track, they're hurting their body. Let's glorify the person who just tore their body into like a hole. Again, I would say from that's ego, but versus very hard thing to do is putting people first, which I think for anyone, like that sounds nice. I'm not the best at doing that. I want to think about myself first. So I want to try to lower myself as much as I can. And that sounds stupid, but that's just basically trying to be more humble, trying to work on personal virtues and vices, that as much as I think I'm doing good, there's always room for improvement. So I think I heard this recently, like, yeah, if you're doing something and you're getting attention for it, you've kind of lost all the benefits, the true benefits of virtue there. So like, I won $1 million and I give people all this stuff and I let people know I gave them that money. That's kind of, the whole thing's kind of lost point in there. So my point is trying to do things in service for other people. But again, I try and think about this as a limited time on this earth, that I don't have any really, it'd be nice to hit those certain goals, but I don't know. I'll stop there because I go on a rabbit hole. You get what I'm saying? Kind of trying to work on just being more humble, being more, yeah, whatever. Which is hard to do on a channel like this because you're talking about products and like this is kind of, there's a business for sure. Like there's stuff you have affiliates. This definitely helps me as a person, and it is kind of a mini kind of a grind with time I have. And my wife doesn't work. I had a lot of kids, so it definitely helps me. I try and, when on that channel, I try and really just focus on still trying to have that level of, X3 is a good example. People hate that thing and they don't like the guy, and it sounds like that's a product I just like though. So if I'm having that channel that I like and I use and having fun with it, and if I get a cutback if they hit like an affiliate link, to me, I think that's a win-win. I don't really mind it so much. That's as far as product promotions and stuff like that, just having fun. So that's like the business side, I guess you can say, of it. My goals for the channel would be just, I kind of take it week by week. I mean, just trying to discover new things. And really a main underscore of the channel, I think it's kind of apparent, is just showing you do not need a massive gym. Because for me, it's like, I wouldn't want that. I would rather just go to a gym if I want all that equipment. It's what can you do with a minimalistic setup as I kind of add and try different things to keep things interesting. Creating products, like there's some ideas I got for products, like that's something as far as like a big lofty goal that I'm looking into for sure. That would be like the biggest grandiose goal. But as far as the channel, it was really just showcasing these. It was like, this is a great tool. No one's talking about it outside maybe you, the other person. I still think these could be the next indoor rower, the next fan bike that everyone picks up. It's just, unfortunately, there's a number of reasons for that. I just think, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I still think it's a valuable tool that no one's talking about. So I'll still keep talking about those. But that would be it. As far as my own personal goals, though, are, if I were to say at the end of the day, yeah, I get caught up in materialistic things. My goal is to not be so caught up in materialistic things. That's what I'm personally trying to really work on, which is very hard to do. So
Now that I've become aware of your channel, I've watched more and more. I find that I'm not just watching because I know you and I'm like, oh, I wonder what he's going to say, but it's because you have genuinely good content. I really do appreciate your insight and the way that you approach this whole concept of whether it's home fitness or health and fitness in general, different products. The way that you interview people, the not just the variety of people you interview, but your approach to it, the questions you ask, and the way that you give them the room to really explain themselves and get their thoughts out there. You're not boxing them in or trying to steer it in any direction. So I think the only thing I worry about with your channel is that with this video, I hope people go to your channel. I hope they click on your videos. I hope they become familiar with you because you have genuinely good content. The only thing I'm worried about is that if people see all the total gym stuff, then they'll get the impression that he's just a total gym guy. Well, I don't own a total gym, so therefore maybe he's not for me. Um, do you have any comments on that concept of, I guess, your overall approach? Like, are you either intentionally or unintentionally, are you just kind of a total gym guy, or is a total gym just something that happens to be there? It's a tool that you use, but you have a larger overall message or a larger overall goal with your videos?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I said that in the past, and you probably faced the same thing when I started talking less about total gym. People got kind of mad, but in my brain, it was like, it was still the core and foundation. Like, I still stand by the idea that if you took away, if I had only one piece of equipment and you wanted me to do home fitness stuff, it was a total gym that allowed me to work out in the home, because everything else, I tried squat racks and dumbbells. I just personally got kind of bored with that. I like having a machine. I can't buy a zillion machines. And I love the way the total gym feels. It does all the things I wanted. So I still stand by that. If you took all these things away, a very close, this speeding thing I like a lot, but I can't be as creative on this thing. And it's like the total gym rolling up and down like that seems more fun. But of all the equipment I have, like, I would still say just give me this and I would probably be set. X3, I love that thing too, but it's too few exercises to me. And again, it's only just that variable resistance. With a total gym or these things, I can do so much with it. So I still do stand by that. It's hard because I want to talk about other things, but this will still always, I think, be a foundation because there's still so many things to do with it. And I just feel like it's just one of those little holes you kind of fill. And I don't like saying, like, yeah, niches do kind of for sure propel you. And that wasn't initially, maybe there was some of that when I first started the channel, but it was really like this. I was just shocked more of the results I was getting, which one machine that I think still to this day, I think, I don't care if it's this thing or anything else. The message is, I don't know if it's, you can make a dumbbell bench channel and be really successful and show people that. But I think that's the biggest thing, is taking the scales off people's eyes that you don't need all this equipment. I still have people commenting like, you can't get big in a total gym, or you can't work out in a total gym. You can't build muscle in a total gym. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So, but that's something that still kind of propels me as like a motivational tool to show that you don't need all this equipment. And even now with other stuff, like, well, do you still go to the gym even though it's other stuff? Like, there's no, why do I need to go to the gym? You get everything at your disposal next to you. So yeah, my question is, I don't know. Your feedback would be good too. I think I posed a poll a while ago, like, should I change the name of the channel? But I don't know. I think at this point, yeah, I feel like I talk about it enough that I still will talk about that. That doesn't make sense to do that. So I don't know. And I also will say too, like, people said a comment the other day, which I think is true. There's a few channels like this, and I kind of want yours to be like this too, where you're like in that classical kind of old school. You're talking about, it's not just the pure cookie cutter, like, although I think you would be like, you talk about the basement brand and I watched your one video, like, you would be like, you'd easily, surpass that and have all sorts of insight, just like a channel like that. But as some people that come to this channel, I think, like the idea of simplicity, like they like the old school bull worker, and they might say, you like gimmicky products. But I think people like the idea of the old school approach to home fitness, at least, where it was, you don't need, they had just the squat rack, barbells, and dumbbells. I can still get in shape and build a body on a relatively simplistic mode. And I think that's what people like, is that kind of really, really old school way of looking at fitness versus the traditional commercial mega bench gyms and expensive equipment type setups.
I think people, whether it's again just a pair of dumbbells at home, or it's the total gym, or it's anything else, I think one of the inherent benefits to that on a subconscious level for anybody is that it kind of proves that there's not a high barrier to entry. Like, you don't have to join this amazing mecca gym. You don't have to have a $10,000 setup in your garage. Um, you really can get good results just by doing the basics. If you just kind of have a direction that you're going and you're consistent, as you were alluding to earlier, you'll see results. So I think, as a totally separate point to make, if you have a video of a channel that only does videos involving dumbbell bench, or another channel that just does stuff for the Bowflex, or a channel that just does total gym stuff, I think an inherent benefit of that is that if it works, then it works, and it proves that even a, let's say, a $15 total gym you got out of a yard sale, like, if that works, then it works. The end. So you don't have to break the bank or have an entire half of the house. You don't have to have a certain amount of square footage. But um, to wrap this up, because I've had you on here for a while, um, do you have any social media other than your YouTube?
No, that's it. I got Instagram might be coming soon, but yeah, that's basically it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time. We This went longer than I expected, but I really do appreciate the time, and you gave some very well thought out, very insightful, and just honest, straightforward answers, and I appreciate it. So I will add your information in the box down below, the description. And other than that, I guess I will talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Skylar. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Bye.